I'm Robert Carpenter. I'm the editor-in-chief of Underground Construction Magazine and your host at this show, UCT. We are extremely happy everybody is here, and as I've had many people, as I've come across them, say, just so good to be out, just so good to see a face in a mask-free environment and get out, shake hands, interact with people, get out in the real world, and let's do business and let's go ahead. And the good news is having a nice conversation with my good friend George Kurz at lunch, and there is work. Things are going on, and things are getting even more and more active all the time, and there are all indicators are that at least in the sewer and water field, it's 21 is going to finish strong and 22 is going to be phenomenal. So that's the bright news. Special thanks today. We are taping this. I think several of you may have seen that. So be sure and smile for the cameras, and you're going to be famous. But regardless, we're going to make these presentations available throughout the year. We're going to post them on the Underground Construction website, YouTube page. We want people to learn, to know. We want to share this with a lot of people. And through the benefit of our sponsors, Avanti, and okay, stand up, Brett. Mr. Avanti's here, and Miss Avanti in the back, Jessica, and Cretex, Lee. Lee's been a long-time supporter of these activities. Madewell, there we go. Thank you very much. And of course, Michaels, Mr. Manichek. So they made this possible, made this taping possible, and again, it'll be up on the Underground Construction YouTube page, website for a year. So any of your clients, your customers, your friends, your co-workers that need to know some information, because there is going to be a tremendous amount of information presented today, or if you just want to go back in and review something, update the information that you receive. Again, because there's so much data going to be presented, feel free to do that. You'll have access to it for the next year. So, and perhaps longer, and I think Don has even more plans for it. So the idea is to show this to people, help you understand what's going on with I&I in our country. So again, thanks to the video sponsors. And I'll get with Don in just a minute. He is today's sponsor, but in the meantime, I'm going to go back to let you feast your eyes on those sponsors. I'm just going to set up the stage today is all really I'm doing here. We're all here. This is about an infiltration and inflow workshop this afternoon. And what is infiltration and inflow, better known as I&I, and why do or should we care? We're going to explore all that this afternoon, and I think get a lot of answers. I&I is the root cause of system overflows. It causes illegal discharges, stress on treatment plants. It also stresses all kinds of the transportation systems, the piping systems. It inflicts structural damage to those pipes and other types of infrastructure. And it enhances, it increases, it generates decay in all of the systems. I&I is an enemy of everything we do in this business. Just how big is a problem of I&I's America? You know, it's only coming from laterals, manholes, so it can't be too big a problem, right? Well, according to the EPA, approximately 50% of sanitary sewer collection systems are comprised of laterals. You know, we're all used to the big inch stuff or the big manhole, but laterals comprise about 50% of it. That's a lot of mileage of laterals, and that's a lot of I&I because that's one of the prime sources for where it comes from. Laterals can equate up to 75% of I&I issues, and that's according to the EPA studies. It has been determined that rehabilitating only the mainline sewer does not eliminate I&I problems. They still remain. And with that in mind, I'd like to kind of put that in perspective, just relate a tale of two cities. And it's a parallel tale of two cities, but the EPA decided from about 2008, during the Obama years, they got a mandate to, let's go back to the city of Houston. Let's go back to Miami. City of Houston was the first $1 billion plus mega consent decree that was passed in the mid-90s. So it was a proving ground for all sorts of things. EPA at that point was involved with the corrective measures, what they were going to do, what they weren't going to do. So they went in, did it, the EPA signed off on it, everybody was happy, declared a success. But during the Obama years, the EPA got funding to go back to some of these cities that have already had their consent decrees. And let's see how well those consent decrees worked. Did we accomplish our goals? Did we solve the problems? And the answer was a resounding no, we didn't. Those cities still have major problems. They still have major issues. And it's not just those two. Those two were the first ones that really went big. And it wasn't just those two. It's also why Houston just has started their work, finished it last spring, and it ramped up their work again, or is in the process of releasing all the work, starting to release it. Miami has been like a maniac for the last 2 years, trying to fix all their laterals and manholes that they possibly can, hoping to avoid a consent decree after what happened to Houston. I don't think they're going to make it, but they might. They're under investigation and in negotiation right now. City of Miami is. Under the Trump administration, there was less enforcement, less push to let's go back and revisit, less money to do it, quite frankly. But under the Biden administration, arguably it'll be even more than the Obama administration. So for those of you in working in municipalities, if you've been under a consent decree, there's a fair chance over the next 4 years, who knows how much, how long this will go on, that you may be revisited to see, did your original consent decree work? And if not, what was the root problem of it? Well, in Houston, they did great things, as I mentioned, but they didn't address the root causes, which was I&I. So while they solved a lot of problems, they still had nonstop I&I that took the smaller problems and accelerated them. Now they're big problems. And they traced it back to I&I as one of the major reasons for that failure. Miami is, like I said, is sweating and repairing their manholes and laterals like crazy to avoid another consent decree. In both situations, one of the key determination was not nearly enough was done to prevent I&I. They just couldn't do enough. And it frequently comes down to money, and we all understand that, but that has to be dealt with. Didn't solve root issues. I&I continues to comply or contribute to out-of-compliance programs, and further, more and more research clearly shows that maintaining your main line alone does not work. To solve your problems, it has to be a total system approach, and that means fixing laterals. That leaves us with two really big questions. First, where do we get the money to deal with all this? That is the multi-billion-dollar question. Well, just to kind of put that in perspective, in 2021, just for the piping infrastructure, municipal personnel project that there will be $5.13 billion spent on new sewer installations. I'm reading these figures here. $3.68 billion for water and $1.9 billion for stormwater. And that's just for new installation. For rehabilitation, there will be approximately $4.84 billion spent on sewer work, $2.22 for water, and another $1.42 on stormwater. And some of the Biden administration's programs will allow a lot more for water if they go through, because they're trying to get rid of all lead pipes. The vast majority of these funds will be spent on mainline sewer and water issues, and precious little on I&I, unfortunately. And that's a lot of money, but not nearly enough. Cities say that in a perfect world, they need over $300 billion just to fix and address their immediate problems, their major problems they have right now. And within 5 years, in order to update their systems enough to where they are working reasonable, not a total solution, but at least get us where we should be, they'll need more than $710 billion just within 5 years. This comes from, and of course this all complicates funding issues. This data comes from a survey we conduct annually of municipalities, and just ask them, what are your many issues facing us? What are you doing with money? What do you need? All these kinds of things. The good news is 2021 may be the best opportunity in years for an influx of federal dollars, good, bad, or indifferent. We'll see. Regardless, there has to be a balance of spending in the available funding pool between fixing the mainline problems and the lateral problems. The second obvious question is, how can we make the most of our resources, stretch our already thin dollars, and seriously address I&I? That's where we're here today to discuss. Hopefully open some eyes and pursue actions to start tackling the two-headed monster of I&I. And there's going to be a lot of data presented today, a lot of solutions, technical issues addressed, and I look forward to hearing all the speakers. They all are experts in their field, so that's what we're going to tackle today. And again, I'll wrap it up at that point. It generally takes me about 30 minutes to say good morning, so I'm cutting it off early. And glad you all are here, glad you're at Nashville, glad you're here for UCT. Hope everybody's going to the conference as well. But look forward to getting some great information today and maybe talking with y'all, some of y'all later at the reception. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to the ACE moderator, and the brainchild, him along with Jessica Williams from Avanti, they're the brainchilds for this thing. So appreciate them and their efforts and their hopes. So come on up, John, and thank you guys very much for doing this.
Robert, you're special.
Yeah, special ed.
I mean that in a very complimentary way, you know that. Yeah, so first thought comes to my mind, Robert, thank you for staying true to cause. This was developed for a January event, and then it became a May event, and now it's a July event. Thank God, July's here, and we are speaking, and we're sharing, and we're teaching what we know and what we believe. And this is so good. I went to Robert probably a couple of years ago, and I said, Robert, I'm looking for a partner. I want to take this thing to the 10 top major markets. And I want to go to the people, because it's hard for municipalities to come here. I would love to see that more municipalities would show up at more trade shows. I see a couple municipalities that are already here. Thank you for coming back. And by the way, for those who don't, some of you know me. For those who don't, my name is Don Rigby, and I get to play a business development role for two companies, Logiball and Prime Resins. And they are sister companies today, and they are working very hard together to make a difference in the infrastructure space, in both preservation and repair of infrastructure. And I get to play a role there. And I became passionate about I&I probably better than 10 years ago, and I worked for Prime Resins in a former life. They asked me to come back, and it's been magical. It's been good. I am pleased to play that role, and I'm pleased to help produce this event so that we can teach people what these guys and these folks know, so you guys can do the right thing. Robert has been an amazing partner in helping us keep this moving in the right direction. Today's theme is think like water, act like essential. So we're going to teach some issues that are fundamental, like the causes and the consequences, and we want to talk about corrective action. Therefore, we set this up in two different portions. Part A, we'll have our guest speakers address the cause and the consequence. Part B, we'll have our solution providers talk about the corrective action. And then I'm going to have these guys trade places with that panel. They'll be over here. In between each speaker, these guys are going to be asking some very tough questions. Only because I want to keep this thing as interactive and interesting as possible. You folks are not off the hook. You are welcome to contribute. There's a microphone right here with your name on it. If you have a question, that's a burning question that you need to know, I want you to feel good about being interactive and being engaged in this thing. This is a small group. I think interactive learning is the most important learning we can do. So I'd like for you to think interactive. What am I asking you to think?
Interactive.
I'd like for this group to think interactive. What's the word? Interactive. Thank you. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get more comfortable with the space, each other, and we're going to have a good time. We're going to learn a lot. If you came to learn something, you'll learn a great deal. I promise you. So I'm going to introduce each one of these guys individually. I don't want to introduce them as a group because they're individually, they're pretty important. If I say 50, 42, 35, 30, 21, 10, what do those numbers have in common? I don't expect you to know the answer. But it's the experience statement that each of these people have in the underground space, managing infrastructure. And that's a lot. That's a big statement. I think I know these people personally, and I know their life story, and I know they have stories to tell you guys. I want you to listen. I want you to take heed. I want you to think like water and act like essential. Do something.